Hello and welcome to Inspiring Teachers. I'm Tavis Beam along with
Danny Hogger.
And today we're talking with Matthew Dix. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Happy to be here.
So I'm driving home from work and I'm catching up on my podcasts, and I listened to your one on the art of manliness. And I've been just enjoying learning more and more about you. And I've started listening to your podcast with your wife as well over the last couple of days. And I'm just absolutely enjoying it. Thank you so much for all the wonderful work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice of you to say.
And I was hoping, because you've got so much, can you go ahead and just tell our viewers a little bit about yourself so they've got an idea of the breadth of what you're really doing?
Sure. My wife is never happy with all the jobs that I have. But I'm an elementary school teacher. I teach fifth grade. I've been doing that for 20 years now. I'm a novelist. My fifth novel is coming out in September of this year. And I also wrote a book on storytelling, a nonfiction book. I'm a storyteller myself. I perform on stages around the world telling stories and doing stand-up now and giving inspirational speeches. My wife and I run a company here called Speak Up in Connecticut. So we produce a show about once a month where we put storytellers on a stage alongside me, and we all tell stories, true stories from our lives, and we work closely with those folks before they ever take the stage so they're well prepared for what they're doing. And so I do that.
Those are some captivating stories. I just listened to the Wet the Bed episode on the way over here, and I was laughing out loud. It was wonderful. Yeah.
Well, sometimes we're blessed with outstanding storytellers. That particular gentleman, he came to us fully formed. I had to do very little work with him. I teach a lot of workshops locally and around the country, and so I hear a lot of stories, and I often steal workshop stories for our shows. So we managed to find a lot of people to take our stage.
Oh, wow, that's really wonderful stuff. Thank you so much.
As someone with a background in broadcasting and 10 years in radio and TV, constructing a story is so much of what got me over my first year of high school, is just being captivating and getting myself over and then getting social studies over. It's like a way to sell and maneuver and manipulate, and everyone is in the palm of your hand when you're in that pocket of a great story. What is it that brought you to teaching, and do you find that it's something that you employ often in your fifth grade classroom?
Well, I came to teaching really because when I was growing up, I didn't have a stable and happy home life, and school was always the safe place for me. And I always saw teachers as my saviors, the people who, picked me up when I was down and the people I could count on. So it was just a natural calling that I wanted to sort of do what they were doing for me, for kids someday. And so it took me a while to get to teaching. I got kicked out of my house when I was 18, so it took a while to get to college and eventually make that dream come true. But it did eventually. And yeah, I use storytelling every single day in my classroom multiple times. I always take the assumption when I'm teaching students that no one wants to learn anything. Although I know that's not true, I believe there's always someone in the room who's not interested in learning on that day. And that's the person I'm targeting. So I need to make sure that there's laughter in the classroom every day, and there's entertainment, and there's personal connection. So I use storytelling all the time.
When the laughter comes in, how do you preserve the laughter so it's laughter for everyone and not laughter at anyone?
Well, I make the laughter about me. They laugh at me.
Yeah.
And so my stories are always stories of my failures and my foibles and my ridiculous situations. And so it's always going to be about me, or it's going to be maybe about a past student. But in that case, this past student is always going to be the hero of the story. It's always going to be something that a kid did that was amazing that I'm going to tell my new students about.
You need them to feel comfortable in the room with you, knowing that they might be the object of one of your stories one day.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I remember when I went to circus school, and clown school specifically, and they always told us, if you ever get a volunteer onto the stage, you need everybody in the audience to say, that looked like fun, I hope he picks me next.
Yeah.
And not, oh dear God, here comes the clown.
Yeah.
What is the feeling? Because I love it when I go for a joke, no one laughs, but then the joke is that no one laughs. And I can be so silly off of that basis point. It makes me love myself even more because, look, I took my foibles to use your word, and I've embraced it. And because I have those faults, everyone just had a moment of enjoyment. What does that feel like for you when it happens?
It depends where I am. If I'm in my classroom and it fails, that's funny. Kids will laugh at me in a way that, as long as they're laughing, I'm happy. I do stand up now, so when it fails and I'm doing stand up, it sort of cuts me to the bone because my goal is to make them laugh, and I know that if I don't make them laugh, they kind of hate me. So it all depends on the audience. But kids, it's great. Storytelling, even, it's great. The nice thing about telling a story is if you plan on a laugh and it doesn't happen, you're still telling a story. You just move on. And oftentimes people don't even realize you were trying to be funny because you're just telling a story. So it depends on the context.
How do you construct a great story? And I know that's not a simple answer. You've been answering that question for years, and we all continue to do it. But some of the things like worst and best, and some of the breakdowns into segments that you've used and that Tavis really enjoyed telling me about, how, if you were to give it an elevator pitch, what makes a great story?
I tell people that most people think that a story is stuff that happened to me told in chronological order. And that really is not a story. It's just a recounting of events. So a story is always going to be a moment of realization or transformation. I either discover something about myself or the world or my wife or a student, or it's transformational. I used to be this, but now I am this. And that's essentially what a story is, rather than stuff that's happening that really doesn't have any ending other than I ran out of time. I noticed you stopped paying attention to me. But that's often how people tell stories. It's just sort of, here's some stuff that happened. So I'm always looking for a moment. I call it a 5-second moment because I think they essentially happen over the course of 5 seconds, where suddenly you've discovered something or suddenly you understand that you're new in some fundamental way.
So I'm wondering, you've told us a little bit about how you got into teaching. Can you talk a little bit, now that you're successful on so many different levels, what continues to drive you? What is your new why of teaching? Why do you continue this great work every day?
It's basically that I love the kids. My wife just recently said for the first time, maybe you should step away from teaching with all the other things you're doing and the success you're having. And my district, my superintendent and folks like that have said, we're always waiting for the day where you're going to come and say, this is it for me. And I say, it's going to be the day that I don't love the kids anymore. The day when the kids are not what I'm looking forward to. Mm-hmm. So as long as I continue loving the time I have with children, I'm going to be a teacher. And so far that has not waned in any way. That is what I look forward to every day.
So it's really about your relationship that you build with them on a daily basis and how you interact with them, getting to know them as a person.
Yeah, it really is. All the nonsense that comes with teaching, it doesn't bother me in any way anymore. I can ignore it. I can cut through it. I have tricks to avoid it. I face it when necessary, but it's about the time I spend with children. We close the door, we're together, we're learning, we're laughing, we're getting to know each other. That's the most important thing for me.
And that's really why we started this podcast. We know so many great teachers that have quit the profession because they're burnt out, exhausted from those things, from the nitty gritty. I'd be interested if you had anything on the top of your head, like what do you do to survive that, besides focusing on on the students, but like how do you navigate all those difficult things that we have to put up with?
I think there's a lot of efficiencies that teachers don't take advantage of. I'm sort of a productivity and efficiency crazy person. I constantly am looking for the quicker and the better way to do things. And so I watch teachers focus on things that don't matter or worry about things that ultimately are not going to make a difference. So a teacher comes to me and says, I just got in trouble. And I say, oh no, what happened? And they say, well, the principal told me not to do that again. And I say, well, that's not trouble. That's just your boss telling you that he doesn't want you to behave like that again. That's not trouble. But in their minds, it becomes trouble. And it's something that creates psychic and emotional drain on them.
Right.
And I just tell them to stop caring about those things. Mm-hmm. And so, it's as simple as instead of spending 4 hours designing and putting up a bulletin board, allow the children to put up a really terrible looking bulletin board, but that they did themselves, right?
Right.
And I watch someone spend 4 hours on a bulletin board because they say it's important to them and it's the thing they love. Yeah. And I say, do you love it more than your family? Do you love it more than the time you could spend with your children? Because educationally speaking, it's probably better to have your students create a bulletin board
Yeah.
and put it up that looks terrible, but is their creation rather than the time you spend. And I just
They
apply
have
that
ownership.
principle. I apply that principle to everything. And so constantly I'm looking for the efficiency so that my job is easier and I can focus more on relationships.
And it's a very real world task for them to, they're learning about each other when they do that. They're learning how to navigate a stapler. There's so much to be got from that experience for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it gives them ownership of their space.
Yeah.
You own the classroom. You get to design what it's going to be. So I'm constantly doing that for people, looking for their efficiencies, their productivity.
So if a good story is all, it sounds like it parallels the hero's journey in a film. What has changed? What is the transformation? What's changed about your storytelling as your career has advanced and as you've expanded into so many areas? How have you bettered yourself as a storyteller?
You know, teaching storytelling has made me a better storyteller more than anything. I told stories for 2 or 3 years without ever teaching it because I didn't want to. I told people I like children, not adults. I don't want to have to spend time, any more time than necessary with an adult. And then I got talked into doing a workshop and I said, I'll do one and never again. You have to take this one. And I really thought that was going to be the case. And what happened was I discovered that in order to teach storytelling, I had to deconstruct my process. And so I had to look at the things that I was doing naturally in a more academic and a more sort of constructivist way. And by doing that, I was able to strengthen strategies and skills that I was using inherently. I was able to sort of more efficiently use them, more procedurally use them. And then I was able to teach them because the one benefit I have to teaching storytelling is that because I understand curriculum, particularly at the elementary school level, I understand the importance of breaking large concepts down into small parts, small, repeatable, practicable parts. And so you can take one of my strategies in storytelling, ignore all the rest, and you're still going to be a better storyteller as a result. And so just learning how to teach it has made me a far better storyteller.
Yeah, and I felt like when I became a teacher, one of the things that helped me become the best teacher I could be was taking classes again and becoming a student. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was a better student as a result of being a teacher.
Yeah.
Learning that process, learning what the teacher's doing and understanding, okay, I get it now. And it's always like when we take one step forward, we understand the previous one a little bit more. So, yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
well, I just have one more question for you. And when your fifth graders are moving out the door, and thank you for everything you've given us, we'd love to have you back again sometime. What is one thing that you hope they would have learned from you besides the curriculum?
Oh, I often say the curriculum is the least important thing that I teach the kids, especially nowadays. Teaching kids information is lovely, but ultimately they carry the world's information in their pockets at all times.
right. Yeah.
So, my goal is that they understand that hard work will always trump talent. And I tell my students that the thing I want them to have the most in life is choice. I tell them the most valuable thing you have is to have the ability to choose what you do in your life. Choose where you live and who you marry or what you will do for a living. And people who have that choice are the most fortunate people. And I say those people are just simply people who work really hard and persist. So that is ultimately what I hope is that they will learn that no matter what class they end up in the future, no matter how difficult it is, no matter what the struggle is, if you just work hard, you can outwork the person sitting next to you who just seems to get it automatically.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always have thought, and as a kid who grew up in Stockton, people told me you won't do much. You're not coming from anything. The only one who's going to talk you out of something is you, right? As soon as you close off that door and say, I can't, you're right. You decided you can't, you're done. But I've always thought if I am driven towards something, no one's going to outwork me. It's not going to happen because I won't allow it. Like I'm going to pound those doors and I'll be friendly. I'm not going to be a jerk. But what you said to me speaks a lot. And I'm so glad that you share that bit of wisdom because it's definitely reflective for me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Where can our viewers find you? Where can they hear more from you?
Well, if they go to my website, matthewdix.com, they can find my blog and links to my books. My podcast is Speak Up Storytelling. You can find it wherever you find podcasts. We publish an episode a week. It's always a story that's been told on one of our stages. And then my wife and I critique the story. We talk about what's working and what's not working in the story to help you have some entertainment in terms of the story, but then also become a better storyteller in the process. So they can find that there as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Matthew Dix. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. And I'm Tavis Beam for Danny Hogger. Thank you so much. Class dismissed.